Good evening, and welcome back to Midnight Radio True Crime. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Wherever you are, lying in bed, driving through quiet streets, or watching the rain outside your window, thank you for choosing to spend this hour with us. I hope tonight's story helps you drift off gently, even as it sends a small chill down your spine. Let us know in the comments what city you're tuning in from tonight. And now, as the world slows down for the night, let's settle in and step quietly into a small lakeside town where one man's peaceful afternoon turned into something he can't forget. He still remembers her voice, her stillness, and the way the water rippled when she looked at him. Let's listen.
My name is Daniel. I'm 35 now, but this happened when I was 24, back in 2014. I've never really told it properly, maybe because every time I try, I start feeling like it wasn't real. But it was. I remember the sunlight, the smell of pine, the cool wind coming off the lake. I remember her. It was a Wednesday, mid-June, and I'd been driving north for work. I was in property inspection back then. I just finished up a morning job in a small town called Brimfield and had a couple hours to kill before the next site. The GPS showed a nearby lake, Lake Caro, and I figured I'd grab lunch by the water. The drive down there was quiet, just one narrow road cutting through forest. When I pulled into the clearing, there was barely anyone around. A few parked cars, a wooden dock, and that deep blue water, perfectly still. The kind of place you'd stop for a breath and forget the world for a bit. I took my sandwich down near the shore, sat on one of those big flat rocks, and just watched the lake. That's when I noticed her. She was sitting maybe 20 yards away, on another rock, close enough that I could see her outline reflected in the water. A woman maybe in her late 20s. She had long dark hair that reached the middle of her back and wore a pale yellow dress, light enough to flutter in the breeze. Nostrus. Her feet were half in the water, making small ripples. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but after a while I realized she wasn't moving, just staring at the lake, not scrolling a phone, not reading, not even blinking much, just there. Eventually, I said something like, "Beautiful day, huh?" She turned her head slightly, almost as if she'd heard me from underwater, and smiled. "It is," she said. Her voice was soft, almost too calm, like it didn't belong to the moment. We talked a bit, small things. She said her name was Elena. I told her I was just passing through. She said she'd grown up here, that she came to the lake often when she needed to think. After a few minutes, I realized something strange. She wasn't making eye contact. Not really. Her eyes kept drifting back to the water. And when I asked if she lived nearby, she said, "Not anymore." I asked what she meant, but she just smiled again, faintly, politely. "It's quieter here," she said. "You can hear people better when they're not around." I didn't know what that meant. I laughed awkwardly, tried to change the subject. She asked about my job, what kind of houses I saw. She seemed genuinely curious, but every few seconds, her gaze would slide away, fixed on the lake's surface, as if waiting for something. The sky darkened a little, clouds moving in. I checked my watch. I'd been sitting there nearly 40 minutes. When I looked back, she was staring at me now, not smiling, just watching. "You should be careful on that road," she said suddenly. "What road?" "The one you came in on, near the bend with the guardrail." I frowned. "Yeah, that's the only one. There was an accident there yesterday," she said. "Someone didn't make it. That threw me off a bit. I hadn't seen any signs, no wrecks, nothing." "Oh, that's terrible," I said. She nodded slowly. It was. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. I packed up my sandwich wrapper and turned back toward her, but she was standing now, brushing sand off her dress. "You're leaving already?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked out across the lake and said, "It doesn't keep secrets well, you know, the lake." And then she started walking toward the tree-line, barefoot, still calm, vanishing between the pines like she'd been part of them all along. I remember sitting there, confused, unsettled, unsure why I suddenly felt like I shouldn't follow. Something about the stillness after she left. It was too quiet. By the time I got back to the car, Rain had started falling in slow, heavy drops. My phone buzzed with a message from my boss asking where I was. I texted back, on the way to the next site. But when I looked back at the lake through the rain, I noticed something strange. Her reflection was still there. Faint, rippling, but there. I told myself it was a trick of the water, a shimmer, a shadow. I drove away, and that would have been the end of it if I hadn't seen her again that evening, standing by the road she warned me about. I saw her again around 7 that evening. It had been raining on and off for hours, the kind that never fully pours but never really stops either. Just a steady mist that makes the whole world feel blurred. I'd finished my last inspection job for the day, a small 2-bedroom cottage outside town, and was driving back toward the highway. My mind kept drifting to the woman from the lake. Elena. I wasn't even sure why she stuck with me. There was nothing obviously strange about her. She didn't look out of place. She didn't act dangerous. But something about that conversation, about how she said the lake doesn't keep secrets, had settled under my skin. The wipers squeaked back and forth as I rounded a bend through the trees, the same bend she'd mentioned earlier. The one near the guardrail, she'd said, and I remember thinking, why did she know that detail so specifically? The road narrowed ahead, twisting slightly downhill. On one side, a wall of pines. On the other, a steep drop to the water below. The guardrail ran along the edge like a dull silver snake, slick with rain. That's when my headlights caught something. A pale figure by the roadside. I slowed instinctively. It was her. Elena stood just beyond the guardrail, motionless, her dress soaked and clinging to her. She wasn't looking at me, though. Her head was turned toward the water, the same way she'd stared at the lake earlier that day. My first thought was that she might be hurt or lost. I pulled over a few yards ahead, rolled down the window, and called out, "Hey, you okay?" She didn't react. I hesitated, then got out, pulling my jacket tight against the rain. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked toward her. "Elena," I said. She turned her head slowly, her eyes finding me through the mist. They were calm, just like before, almost too calm. "You shouldn't stop here," she said. I blinked. "What are you doing out here? You need a ride." She shook her head faintly. "Someone else will need it more." I was about to ask what she meant when I noticed the guardrail beside her. The metal was bent inward, a dark skid mark running down from the road's curve. At the bottom, through the trees, I could just make out something metallic reflecting faintly in the water below. A car, upside down. I felt my stomach drop. Oh my God! I turned to look at her again. But she wasn't there. I swear she was standing there not 3 seconds earlier, clear as day. I spun around, scanning the road, the trees, nothing. Just the sound of the rain and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I took a step toward the guardrail, trying to peer down. The slope was steep, muddy. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam caught a shimmer. Broken glass, torn metal, the faint outline of a license plate half submerged. I called 911 immediately. The dispatcher's voice was calm but brisk. "Yes, I'm near Lake Caro. There's been an accident. A car's off the road." She asked for landmarks, and I did my best to explain. Within minutes, I saw flashing lights through the rain behind me. First a patrol car, then an ambulance. 2 officers stepped out. One was a middle-aged man with a thick gray mustache. The other looked younger, maybe mid-20s. The older one asked, "You the caller?" "Yeah, I just saw it. The car down there." He nodded. "All right, stay put." They went down the slope with flashlights. I stood by the road, shivering. The rain had started to ease, but the smell of wet earth was heavy, metallic. A few minutes later, I saw them stop, shine lights on something, then call the paramedics down. One of them shouted, "Single occupant, female, late 20s. The younger officer climbed back up, his boots caked in mud. "You said you just found it?" "Yeah," I said. "I was driving by. I saw a woman standing here, and..." He frowned. "A woman?" "Yeah, she was right here by the guardrail. Dark hair, yellow dress." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he exhaled and looked toward the wreck. "Sir, The victim down there is a woman, dark hair, wearing a yellow dress. For a moment I couldn't speak. The air felt thick in my throat. No, I said finally. That's not possible. She was just here. I talked to her. I swear she was standing right. He held up a hand gently. Let's just take a breath, all right? Behind him, the medics were lifting something onto a stretcher. Even from where I stood, I could see it. Pale fabric, soaked through. Yellow. The younger officer glanced back, then lowered his voice. That crash happened yesterday, he said. We've been looking for the car since morning. Rain started again, harder this time, drumming against the asphalt. I felt frozen, caught between disbelief and something else. Not fear, exactly, but a deep, crawling unease. The older officer called the younger one down to help, leaving me by the road. My hands trembled as I reached for the car door. Through the windshield, I could still see the reflection of the lake below, dark and endless. I told myself it couldn't be real, that maybe I'd imagined her standing there. Maybe my brain filled in something I'd read, or maybe I'd seen someone else earlier and confused it. That's what I told myself. But as I started the engine and pulled back onto the road, my headlights caught the guardrail one last time. There was something written there, faint, drawn through the layer of wet dust with a fingertip. For words. I tried to warn you. I didn't sleep that night. I checked into a small roadside motel about 20 miles out. One of those places with humming vending machines and a single clerk who barely looks up when you walk in. The sheets smelled faintly of bleach and damp air conditioning. I turned off the lights, lay down, and stared at the ceiling until morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing by that guardrail. Soaked, still, her face half in shadow. And then the words. I tried to warn you. Around 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep. The rain had stopped, and the early light outside was the kind that feels hollow, gray and directionless. I made coffee, sat on the edge of the bed, and scrolled through my phone. No news, no updates, no mention of a crash at Lake Caro. I checked again an hour later. Still nothing. No local woman found dead. No roadside tragedy. Nothing. That didn't make sense. I'd seen the wreck, seen the paramedics pulling someone out. They'd said it happened yesterday. But if that were true, how had I spoken to her after that? I told myself maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe there were two women, two yellow dresses. Maybe my brain was connecting things that didn't belong together. But the image of her reflection in the lake, the stillness of it, wouldn't leave me. By 8, I was already back in the car, heading toward Brimfield. I told myself it was just curiosity, closure. But deep down, I knew I wanted to see if she was still there. The road was drier now, leaves glistening under the morning sun. I passed the gas station, the old diner, the empty stretch of forest, until the sign for Lake Caro appeared again. The parking lot by the lake was almost empty, just one other car, an old silver Corolla with faded plates. I parked near the same rock where I'd eaten lunch the day before. The water was calm again, like glass. No one there. I walked down to the edge, feeling the damp soil under my shoes. For a while, I just stood there, watching the surface shift gently in the breeze. Then I saw it on the rock where she'd been sitting. A pair of footprints, bare, faint, but fresh. I knelt down. The sand around the rock was still slightly wet, as if someone had been there that morning. But there were no other signs, no shoes, no bag, nothing. Hello, I called out, my voice echoing softly across the lake. Elena. Nothing but birds. I walked along the waterline for a while, trying to trace the footprints, but they disappeared into the grass. That's when I noticed something floating near the dock, a small object bobbing just under the surface. I crouched, reached in, and pulled it out. It was a locket, gold-colored, worn, cold to the touch. The clasp was rusted shut. My heart thudded as I turned it over. On the back, faint but readable, were 2 engraved letters, E-H. I slipped it into my pocket and stood up, scanning the lake again. The wind picked up slightly, pushing ripples toward shore. I felt suddenly watched. Not from the water, but from the trees behind me. A man was standing there, middle-aged, heavy-set, wearing a sheriff's department jacket. He must have walked down from the road above, because I hadn't heard a car. "You the guy who called it in last night?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "They told me someone died?" He nodded slowly. "Local woman. Elena Hayes, 28. The name hit me like a punch. "Hayes," I repeated. "That's her last name?" "Was," he said. He took off his hat, rubbed the back of his neck. "Poor thing went off the curve sometime late Tuesday night. No seat bel. Water filled up fast. We pulled her out yesterday morning." I stared at him. "Yesterday morning? Are you sure?" He frowned. "That's what I said." I hesitated. "But," I talked to her. "Yesterday afternoon. She was right here." The sheriff looked at me for a long moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You sure about that?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I sat with her. We talked for almost an hour. She told me she used to come here to think." He sighed quietly. "Son, maybe you saw someone who looked like her, but she's been dead for at least a day before you called it in." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the locket. "She dropped this, or left it." He took it from my hand, turned it over, and nodded slowly. "Yeah," he murmured. "That's hers. We found the same photo inside her car." I felt dizzy. "Then how?" He held up a hand. "Look, I don't know what you saw, but sometimes when people go through something shocking, their mind fills in the blanks. You found the wreck. That's enough to shake anyone." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. The sheriff pocketed the locket, thanked me for calling it in, and started back toward the road. Before he disappeared up the hill, he turned back. "You should head home, son. Nothing good comes from staying around here." I watched him go, his footsteps crunching through the gravel. I stayed by the lake a few minutes longer, staring at the spot where she'd sat, where her footprints still pressed into the damp sand. Then something moved beneath the surface, a dark shape gliding just below the reflection of the trees. I took a step closer. It wasn't a fish. It was the outline of a hand, rising slowly from the water before sinking again into the depths. When the ripples faded, something else floated up. A small strip of yellow fabric, torn clean at the edge, drifting toward me like a whisper. I didn't pick up the fabric. Something about it felt wrong. It drifted toward me, lazy and soft, the edge brushing against the rock where her footprints still pressed into the sand. The moment it touched the shore, the air felt heavier, not colder, just denser, like the whole lake was holding its breath. I stepped back. I don't really remember getting into the car, just the sound of gravel spinning under the tires as I pulled away from Lake Caro. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't even know where I was going. I just followed the signs toward the center of Brimfield. By the time I reached town, it was just past 9. The streets were quiet, the kind of small-town morning that feels frozen in time. A coffee shop, a hardware store, a faded banner advertising the annual Lake Days Festival, already curling at the corners. I parked near a row of old brick buildings, right in front of the sheriff's office, a narrow, 2-story structure that looked more like a converted post office than a police station. Inside, it smelled faintly of coffee and copier ink. A bell jingled when I stepped in. The same sheriff from the lake was standing behind the counter, talking to a woman in a floral blouse. When he saw me, his expression tightened slightly. "You again," he said. "You didn't take my advice to head home, did you?" I shook my head. I can't stop thinking about it. About her. About what I saw." The woman glanced between us, curious, but he gestured for her to give us a minute. Once she stepped out, he sighed and motioned toward a chair. "All right, sit. What is it you think you saw?" I sat, hands clasped. "I told you, I met her before the crash site, yesterday afternoon. She said her name was Elena. She talked about the lake. She said it doesn't keep secrets." He looked at me carefully, chewing on the end of a pen. "You said she told you that yesterday afternoon?" "Yes." He set the pen down. "Then I'm going to tell you something that's probably going to stick with you. The last confirmed sighting of Elena Hayes was Monday evening. At a diner about 3 miles north of here. Waitress said she came in alone, ordered coffee, stayed maybe 20 minutes. After that, nothing. No credit card use, no calls, no text records. The wreck must have happened late that night. I felt my pulse in my ears. But she couldn't have been dead. She was talking to me, laughing, breathing. He leaned forward slightly, voice quiet. Daniel, grief and trauma can do strange things to a person's mind, even if the loss isn't your own. You found the car, you saw the body. That's enough to make anyone start second-guessing what they saw before. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her reflection on that lake, as solid and human as I was. Did she have anyone? I asked finally. Family? Friends? He nodded. A brother. Lives in town. Works over at the auto shop near the highway. Name's Marcus Hayes. Can I talk to him? He looked skeptical. Not sure that's a good idea. I just need to ask him something, I said. Please. After a moment, he sighed. Fine, but you be respectful. He's had a hell of a few days. He scribbled an address on a notepad, tore the page, and handed it to me. That's the shop. Don't stir up trouble. I thanked him and left. The auto shop was on the edge of town. A squat metal building with 2 service bays and a flickering open sign. The air smelled of oil and rain-soaked concrete. Inside, a man in his 30s was leaning over an engine, wiping grease from his hands. Marcus Hayes. Asked. He looked up, wary. Yeah, who's asking? My name's Daniel. I think I met your sister. He froze for a second, then set the rag down slowly. You think you met her? I nodded. At the lake. Yesterday. He stared at me, trying to decide if I was joking. That's not possible. I know how it sounds, I said quickly. But she talked to me. She said she used to come there to think. She told me to be careful on the road near the guardrail. Marcus's expression shifted. Not anger, but something closer to fear. She said that to you? Yes. He turned away, rubbed the back of his neck. You're not the first person. That stopped me cold. What do you mean? He didn't answer at first. He walked to the back of the shop, rummaged through a small drawer, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. It was a newspaper clipping, yellowed and creased. Local woman killed in Lake Caro accident, 2011. I scanned the text. The victim's name wasn't Elena. It was Samantha Kearns, 29. The photo showed a woman with light hair and a gentle smile. Underneath, a line read, "Witness claims to have spoken with the victim hours after the crash was believed to occur." I looked up at Marcus, confused. "That's not my sister," he said. "But that road? That lake? This isn't the first time someone's seen something that shouldn't be there." I swallowed hard. "You think the stories are true?" He gave a bitter laugh. "I think that lake doesn't let go of people easy." He looked at me again, more carefully this time. "You said she told you it doesn't keep secrets?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe she was trying to tell you one." Before I could ask what he meant, a low rumble echoed from outside, thunder rolling in the distance. The light flickered. Marcus turned toward the window. "Storm's coming. You should go." I hesitated, wanting to press for more, but his face had closed off again, jaw tight. So I left. Outside, the sky had gone dark, clouds thick and bruised. The air smelled of ozone. I started toward the car, and that's when I saw it. Across the street, half hidden behind the rain-streaked glass of a bus stop shelter, stood a woman in a pale yellow dress. She wasn't moving, just watching. For a moment, I thought the rain was playing tricks on me. She was standing across the street, perfectly still beneath the shelter, her hair dark and slick against her face, her dress clinging in folds to her knees. Even through the curtain of rain, I knew it was her. Elena. The street was nearly empty. A single pickup truck drove past, its headlights flashing through the mist, and when they caught her face, she didn't blink. She just stood there, watching me. I didn't think. I just started moving. The puddles soaked my shoes as I crossed the street. My jacket pulled tight against the wind. Cars hissed by on wet asphalt, their reflections flickering across her face. But as I got closer, something strange happened. The air felt warmer, thick, like walking into a fog that pressed back. She was maybe 10 feet away when she finally spoke. "You went back," she said softly. Her voice was exactly as I remembered, calm, gentle, but too steady, like it carried no breath. "Yes," I said. "I had to know who you were. I had to understand." Her eyes flicked to the ground, then back up. Understanding isn't the same as listening. I didn't know what that meant. "What do you want from me?" She tilted her head slightly, as if considering. "You were supposed to leave." The rain was falling harder now, drumming against the metal roof of the shelter. Her hair hung wet over her shoulders, her skin pale under the gray light. "Elena," I said quietly, "they said you died, that the crash happened before I ever met you." She looked past me, toward the horizon. "People always try to put time in order, but the lake doesn't work like that." My heart was hammering. "What happened to you? Why did you warn me?" For the first time, her expression changed. Not sadness exactly, but something close. "Because someone's going to die on that road again. Today." He stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She didn't answer. She stepped back slightly, and for a second I thought she was going to walk away again, into the sheets of rain. But she didn't move. She just looked past my shoulder. I turned around. Across the street, the door of the auto shop had opened. Marcus was standing there, one hand shielding his eyes from the rain. He was looking straight at me, or maybe past me. When I turned back toward the shelter, Elena was gone. My pulse roared in my ears. The space she'd been standing in was empty except for a puddle, faint ripples spreading outward as if someone had just stepped through it. Marcus jogged across the street, shouting over the rain. "Hey, you all right?" I nodded, though my voice felt stuck somewhere behind my ribs. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. He hesitated. I saw her again. She was right there. He glanced at the empty shelter, jaw tightening. "You sure?" "Yes." He looked at the puddle, then at me. His voice dropped. "You remember I told you she said something about secrets?" I nodded. "She had this thing about that road. Said the town was covering something up. The curve where she crashed, it's not the first accident there. It's the third in 10 years. All single car, all at night, all women driving alone." I frowned. "You think that's a coincidence?" He shook his head. "I think it's a pattern no one wants to talk about." Thunder cracked, echoing over the rooftops. Marcus leaned closer. "You said she warned you about the road, right?" "Yes." Then maybe she wasn't talking about herself. Before I could ask what he meant, a loud noise cut through the air, the screech of tires on wet pavement, followed by a sharp metallic crunch. Came from somewhere up the hill toward the bend. Marcus's head snapped up. "That's the highway," he said. We both ran. Rain pounded against us as we sprinted up the road, our shoes slipping on the slick asphalt. The sound of sirens was already rising in the distance, faint, far off. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. As we neared the curve, I saw it, the guardrail, twisted and shining in the headlights of a car half hanging over the edge. Steam poured from the crumpled hood. Marcus shouted, "Call it in!" But I was already dialing 911. My voice shook as I gave the dispatcher the location. When I hung up, I turned toward the wreck. Through the cracked windshield, I could just make out a shape inside. A woman, her head slumped forward, motionless. The same stretch of road, the same angle, the same silence. Marcus climbed onto the guardrail, shouting her name, but I couldn't hear him anymore. My attention was drawn to the reflection in the rain pooling beneath the car. In the rippled surface, I could see Elena, standing just beyond the wreck, her yellow dress impossibly dry. She looked up at me one last time and whispered something I could almost hear over the rain. It sounded like, "You're next." The sirens reached us 5 minutes later. Red and blue lights pulsed through the mist, flashing across the wet trees, the bent guardrail, and Marcus's pale face. He kept pacing back and forth, muttering, "Same spot, same damn spot." I stood still, my clothes plastered to my skin, watching the paramedics work. The woman in the car, she couldn't have been older than 30. Brown hair, a necklace shaped like a tiny silver bird, her phone still clutched in one hand. The paramedics pulled her out slowly. One of them shook his head. Marcus swore under his breath and turned away. I wanted to go closer, but something in me froze. It wasn't just the body. It was what was lying beside it. A yellow fabric, caught on a piece of broken glass, fluttering in the rain. Piece of a dress. I must have gone pale because Marcus stepped up beside me. "Hey, Daniel, you okay?" I couldn't answer. My mind was caught between that woman on the ground and Elena's words echoing in my head. Someone's going to die on that road again. Today. I knelt down, staring at the fabric. It wasn't the same yellow. Hers had been softer, sun-worn. But the way it tore, the texture, even the stitching near the hem, it was identical. A hand touched my shoulder. One of the officers, his voice firm but not unkind. "Sir, we're going to need a statement." Marcus answered for both of us. "He's in shock, officer. We saw it happen." The car lost control on the curve. The officer nodded. "We've had 2 other accidents here, always the same bend. But this," he paused, glancing toward the guardrail. "This one feels different." I finally found my voice. "Different how?" He looked at me. "She wasn't alone." I blinked. "What?" He motioned toward the car. Passenger seat, empty now. Seatbelt undone. Someone else was here before we arrived. Marcus frowned. "You think they ran?" "Maybe. Or maybe they were picked up. But whoever they were, they left this behind." He held up a soaked photo in a plastic evidence bag. It was bent, waterlogged, but I recognized it immediately. It was me, standing beside the lake, smiling, wearing the same jacket I had on now. The date in the corner said May 23rd, 2 days from now. My stomach turned to ice. "That's not possible," I whispered. "That picture, it doesn't exist." The officer studied me carefully. "You're saying you've never seen this photo before?" "I'm saying it hasn't been taken yet." Marcus looked between us, his brow furrowing. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the photo as the rain ran down the plastic, distorting my face. The officer sighed, slid the photo into an evidence folder, and nodded toward the patrol car. "We'll be in touch for your statement. Don't leave town tonight." When they left, the flashing lights disappeared down the road, swallowed by the mist. Only the sound of rain and the distant hum of the highway remained. Marcus lit a cigarette, his hands shaking slightly. "You need to tell me what's going on. You look like you've seen yourself in a coffin." I laughed. A broken, nervous sound. "Maybe I have." He exhaled smoke into the wet air. "This Elena thing, you think she's connected?" "She has to be," I said. "She warned me this would happen. She said it wasn't over." "Then who was that woman?" "I don't know." We stood there for a long time, just listening to the rain. Eventually, Marcus said quietly, "Come on, let's get out of here before the cops start thinking we know more than we do." We drove back into town in silence. The wipers creaked back and forth, the heater blowing damp air that smelled faintly of metal. Halfway down the road, Marcus spoke again. "That photo, it could have been doctored. Maybe someone's messing with you." "Maybe," I said, though I didn't believe it. When I finally got home, I hung my soaked jacket on the chair and turned on the light. My living room looked normal, too normal. The framed photo of my parents still on the shelf, the same coffee mug on the table. But something was wrong. There was a faint smell, something floral and faintly metallic. Lavender, Elena's perfume. I walked slowly toward the window. Raindrops were streaking down the glass, and for a second, when the lightning flashed, I saw it again, a reflection. Not mine. A woman's outline standing just behind me. When I turned around, the room was empty, but on the table next to the mug was my phone. The screen was on. A new photo had appeared in my gallery, time-stamped May 23rd. It was me, standing by the lake. Same pose, same smile, same yellow dress behind me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture again. Me standing by the lake, Elena's yellow dress behind me like a shadow caught mid-breath. The timestamp read May 23rd, 10:41 a.m. It was only May 21st. I sat at the kitchen table long after the rain stopped, phone screen lighting my face, the house silent except for the ticking of the clock. There had to be an explanation. There always is. Files can glitch, timestamps can get corrupted. That's what I told myself as I opened the photo's metadata. Details, file origin, camera type. Except it didn't say unknown. It said, captured with Pixel 7 owner. Daniel R. My own phone. My own device. The location tag chilled me more than the image itself. Lake Darren Overlook, 43.200 N, dash 87.511W. The exact same spot where I'd first met her. I just sat there for a long time, staring at that line of coordinates, feeling like I was being pulled toward it. I thought about deleting the photo, pretending it didn't exist. But I didn't. Instead, I plugged the phone into my laptop, saved a copy, and started packing a bag. By dawn, I was on the road again. The storm had passed. Mist hung low over the hills, and the world felt washed clean, almost gentle. But every bend, every tree, every mile marker carried a weight, like the landscape itself was watching. As I got closer to Lake Darren, the radio cut out. Just static. It had done that the first time, too. The road narrowed into cracked pavement lined with weeds. I parked where it ended, near the overlook. The lake stretched below, still and gray, its surface smooth as glass. I stepped out. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles. Standing there, I could almost see it, the way it had been that day. Elena leaning on the railing, her hair blowing in the wind. That soft laugh that didn't seem to belong to anyone in particular. I took my phone from my pocket. The GPS flickered, no signal. But the time still read 10:35 a.m. 6 minutes until the photo was supposed to exist. For the first time, I realized what I was doing. Standing alone in the woods, waiting for a photograph that hadn't been taken yet. Then, from behind me, the faint crunch of gravel. I turned. Marcus's old sedan pulled up on the roadside, headlights dim. He stepped out, looking exhausted. "You're here early," he said. I tried to smile. Couldn't stay away. He looked around. "You shouldn't be here, man. The cops are already asking questions. They think that crash wasn't an accident." I froze. "What do you mean?" He rubbed his face. "They found brake fluid on the road. Someone tampered with her car before she drove off. It wasn't just bad luck. It was staged." My mind raced. "But who?" Marcus shrugged. "That's what they're trying to figure out. And you showing up in the photos of the victim's phone isn't helping your case." I blinked. "What?" He frowned. "They didn't tell you?" I shook my head slowly. Marcus took a step closer. "That woman from last night, the one who died? They found your number saved under E. They thought it was Elena, but the text thread, it's from your phone." I felt dizzy. "That's impossible. I never." He held up a hand. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but you need to be careful. Someone's playing with you, and it's working." I checked my phone again. 10:40 a.m. The seconds ticked forward. Marcus's voice faded under the sound of wind in the trees. I turned back toward the lake. The water shimmered under the pale light. And then, for just a heartbeat, I saw her. Elena, standing at the edge of the overlook, exactly where she'd been the first time. My phone vibrated. I looked down. New photo added to gallery. My hands went cold. I opened it. Same image. Same timestamp. Only this time, there was something different. A second reflection in the water beside me. Marcus. And just beyond him, another figure, half hidden in the trees. I looked up sharply. No one there. But Marcus was staring at me now, his face unreadable. "You saw her, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "Yes." He took a step closer. "Then maybe it's time you tell me the truth." I frowned. "About what?" He reached into his coat pocket, pulled something out, and tossed it onto the hood of my car. A photograph. Old, creased, water-stained, but unmistakable. Me and Elena, standing together, smiling, the same yellow dress, the same lake, only the date on the back wasn't May. It was October 2022, almost a year before she died. I stood there staring at the photo, rainwater dripping from the brim of my jacket onto the faded image. It was me, there was no doubt. Same smile, same scar on my chin, same jacket I was wearing right now. Elena stood beside me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. She looked alive, radiant even, as if the lake behind us had caught its reflection in her eyes. But the date? October 2022. That was 7 months before I supposedly met her for the first time. My voice came out low, almost a whisper. Where did you get this? Marcus looked uneasy. It was in her file. What file? He hesitated. After the crash, the sheriff's office kept a record: photos, witness notes, background checks. I still have access to some of it from when I worked there. I blinked. You used to work at the sheriff's office? He nodded once. Maintenance. But I saw the reports. You were mentioned, Daniel. Not by name at first, just as the man at the lake. They didn't have a photo of you then. But I found this one mixed in with her personal effects when they boxed her things. The thing is, your name wasn't in any official system afterward. No license record, no employment history, nothing that connected you to her. I stared at him. What are you saying? He sighed. I'm saying either someone wiped that connection clean, or you did. The words hit like ice water. You think I erased myself? I think someone didn't want you remembering her. We stood there in silence, the wind shifting the mist over the lake. My reflection rippled across the water, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. I took the photo back, turned it over in my hands. The ink on the date had bled slightly, October 14th, 22, and beneath it, faint pencil markings. D+E, keep this safe. A chill moved through me. She wrote this, I murmured. Marcus lit another cigarette, his voice calm but firm. There's something else you need to see. He opened his glove compartment, pulled out a small black flash drive. This was in her old car, taped under the seat. I shouldn't have it, but here. I hesitated, staring at it. You think it's connected? He nodded. There was a note with it. It said, if anything happens to me, he'll come back here. I looked at him sharply. She meant me? Marcus met my eyes. You tell me. We drove back to my house in silence. The road wound through fog, the faint hum of the engine the only sound between us. When we arrived, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a single folder appeared. /Darren_recordings/. Inside were 3 audio files, all named by date. The most recent, 10-13-22 MP3. I clicked play. Static filled the room. Then a woman's voice, Elena's. If you're hearing this, something's gone wrong. The man I've been seeing, Daniel, he's not who he thinks he is. I don't know if it's him or something that was done to him, but he forgets whole pieces of time. He comes back here and doesn't remember being here. He looks at me like we're meeting for the first time. Every single time. My blood ran cold. Her voice trembled slightly, but she kept speaking. He told me once he worked for the city surveyor or something, but I checked. There's no record, no address, no tax ID, nothing. It's like he appeared one day out of nowhere. I thought it was a joke at first, but last week, I followed him. The audio glitched. Then softly, he met with someone at the Overlook, a man in a gray coat. They were talking about the road, about covering up the accidents. And then Daniel looked right at me from across the lake, like he could feel I was there. But the way he looked, it wasn't him. It wasn't the man I knew. The file ended. Marcus turned to me slowly. What the hell is this? I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. I replayed her words in my head. He's not who he thinks he is. I reached for the next file, 10-12-22 MP3. Another recording. Her voice again, more frantic. Daniel came by the shop today. He didn't remember the last time we spoke. When I asked about the man in the gray coat, he said he'd never met him. But I saw them, Marcus. I saw them. I think they're hiding something under the lake. Static swallowed the last few seconds. I closed the laptop slowly. Marcus's cigarette burned down to a tiny orange ember. You want to tell me what's going on? I shook my head. I don't know anymore. He leaned back, exhaling. Well, if she thought something was buried under the lake, there's only one way to find out. He met my eyes. We go there. Tonight. The clock on the wall ticked 9:17 p.m. Outside, the fog thickened again, rolling in from the trees. I looked down at the flash drive still warm in my hand, then back at him. Something deep in my chest whispered that going back there was a mistake, that whatever was waiting in those waters wasn't meant to be found. But I nodded anyway. All right, I said quietly. Let's go. By the time we got back to Lake Darren, the fog had turned thick as smoke. The moon hung pale above it, faint and blurred, throwing a cold light over the water. We parked a few yards from the overlook. The air was sharp and wet, the kind of cold that made you aware of every breath. Marcus killed the engine, and the silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no fracks, no sound at all except the slow drip of water from the trees. He flicked on a flashlight. The beam cut a narrow path through the fog. You sure about this? He asked. No, I said, but I have to know. We made our way down the narrow path that led to the lakeshore, our boots sinking into the soft mud. The mist clung to everything, to our clothes, our hair, our skin. It felt almost alive. The lake looked endless at night. The surface was still like a mirror that didn't reflect right. You could see faint ripples where the reeds met the waterline, but nothing else. Marcus scanned the area with the flashlight. She said something was buried under here, right? I nodded, pulling a folded map from my jacket pocket. One-eyed printed from an old survey site. This whole area used to be a town, I said. Darren Creek Village, flooded out back in the 60s to make the reservoir. He frowned. You're saying there's still stuff down there? Foundations, maybe. Roads. There's supposed to be a bridge that got submerged too. He crouched beside the water, shining the light across its surface. You ever wonder why they never drained it after the accidents? I didn't answer. Something was stirring in the back of my mind. Half-formed memories, faces I couldn't name, a sound like static underwater. I knelt beside him. The lake smelled of algae and rust. There was a soft clinking sound nearby, like metal brushing stone. Do you hear that? I asked. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, it's coming from the dock. We followed the noise until the flashlight caught on a small wooden jetty jutting out into the water. At the end of it was something shiny. A chain looped around a post, leading into the lake. Marcus crouched and tugged it. It didn't budge. Feels heavy. I helped him pull. The chain groaned and shifted, and something dark began to rise through the water. A black plastic tarp, wrapped tightly around what looked like a metal box. The smell hit first. Mud, rust, and something sour underneath. We dragged it onto the dock. Marcus's hands were shaking. Jesus, what the hell is this? The padlock was old but brittle. One good hit with the flashlight broke it open. Inside, wrapped in layers of soaked cloth, were stacks of paper. Old blueprints, handwritten notes, and a manila folder marked Project Darren. Mate. Records. Confidential. Marcus whistled softly. Maintenance records. My old department. I unfolded one of the sheets. It was a structural diagram of the dam, with red markings along one section labeled Water Flow Diversion / Test Site B. And underneath, scrawled in faded ink, Cover-up effective. Witness list. Terminated / relocated. I turned the page and froze. There was a photograph attached, an aerial shot of the lake before it was flooded. For people stood near the waterline, facing the camera. Marcus, Elena, the man in the gray coat, and me. Only the date stamped on the corner wasn't 2022. It was 1997. The world seemed to tilt sideways. This isn't possible, I said. Marcus was staring too, his face pale. That's me. But I wasn't even born in 97. The fog thickened around us. My head buzzed with static, flashes of memory that didn't belong. Me standing by the water, Elena's hand in mine, a drilling machine behind us, the hum of generators. Marcus's voice sounded far away. Daniel, what do you remember? I pressed my hands against my temples. I don't know. I keep seeing things, her voice, that lake, something buried in the foundation. We were here before. We built something. What? I don't know. Lightning flashed in the distance, a white vein splitting the clouds. The thunder came a moment later, rolling low and heavy. Then Marcus's flashlight flickered and went out. For a second, everything was black. When the beam came back, Marcus was gone. Marcus, called. No answer. The fog shifted. Ripples spread across the surface of the lake. I stepped closer to the water, the beam trembling in my hand. And then I saw it, a face breaking the surface. Not Elena's. Mine, eyes open, staring up from the water. I stumbled back, heart pounding, breath tearing from my chest. The reflection stayed there, unmoving, and then slowly it smiled. Couldn't breathe. My hands shook so violently that the flashlight cut across the water in jagged lines. The reflection didn't move like water should. It stayed rigid, staring up at me with a calm that I did not feel. And then it did something impossible. It smiled. Not the faint, nervous smile I remembered of myself. This was deliberate, slow knowing. Daniel, it said. I jumped back. My voice caught in my throat. Who? What are you? The reflection's lips didn't move. But the voice, mine and not mine, came from the fog itself. You're asking the wrong question. A shiver ran down my spine. I wanted to run, but the dock was narrow, slick with rain and mud. My boots slipped. My heart raced. Marcus, I called. Where did he go? The reflection's eyes glinted. Do you remember building it? I froze. Building what? The lake, the road, everything you think is a memory, a place, a time you helped hide it. No, that's impossible. I don't. You do. You just forgot. My stomach turned. Images, half-formed, began surging back. Hands moving over soil. Machinery. A man in a gray coat giving orders. Elena beside me, looking terrified as we pulled something heavy into the water. My own hands stained, gripping ropes, pushing boxes, tying them down. I stumbled back, gripping the dock's railing. I don't remember any of that. You chose not to, the reflection said. Or someone chose for you. The water rippled violently. For a brief moment, the reflection disappeared, replaced by another face. Elena's. Her eyes were wide, scared. Her hand outstretched as if trying to pull me in. You didn't listen, she whispered. You never listen. The flashlight flickered again, and then Marcus was there. He emerged from the fog on the far end of the dock, soaked, panting, eyes wide. Daniel, don't look too long. What do you mean? I yelled, backing up. The water shows you things that shouldn't exist. The lake, it doesn't forgive, and it doesn't lie. I glanced again at my reflection. It had returned. The smile was wider now, angrier, knowing. My voice echoed from the fog. You, what are you? The reflection tilted its head. I am what remains. I am what you buried. I am everything you forgot. Something inside me snapped. I lunged toward the water, desperate to pull myself from whatever illusion this was, when the reflection shifted suddenly. A violent wave rippled across the dock, knocking me off balance. I hit the wet wood hard, sliding perilously close to the edge. Water lapped at my knees. Marcus reached for me, but the dock creaked dangerously under both our weight. Daniel, hold on. I grabbed his hand, but when I looked at his eyes, I saw fear unlike anything I'd seen before. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, at something in the fog. The water behind us churned, black and opaque. Something moved beneath it. A shape, massive and slow, gliding just under the surface toward the dock. Marcus shouted, "We need to get out of here now." I tore my hand free and scrambled up, dragging Marcus with me. Our feet slipped, mud spraying as we lunged toward the path leading back to the car. A sound followed us, low, wet, almost human, the kind of sound that seems to echo inside your skull. We didn't stop. Not until the trees thinned and the lights of the car broke through the mist. We climbed in, slammed the doors, and I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Marcus finally said, voice trembling, "Daniel, you need to know something. That thing in the water, it's not just a reflection. It's what the lake keeps. All the people you buried, all the secrets. It remembers." I swallowed hard. "And Elena?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "She was trying to warn you. She's part of the reason you're alive right now. But she can't save you from yourself." I didn't answer. As we drove away, the fog clung to the lake like a living thing. The surface was smooth again, almost peaceful. But deep down, I knew the calm was a lie. The lake was waiting, and so was the part of me that I had buried so long ago. We didn't speak much on the drive back. The headlights cut through the lingering fog like knives, illuminating the empty road ahead. Every bend, every tree line felt alive, watching, remembering. Marcus kept glancing at me, his hands tight on the wheel. Finally, he broke the silence. "You need to remember, Daniel. You can't run from this." I shook my head. I don't even know where to start. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about her. It's all wrong. He nodded grimly. "That man in the gray coat, the one in the photo, the one Elena was terrified of, he's connected to you, to everything buried under that lake. And he's still out there." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean? Who is he?" Marcus exhaled, smoke from his cigarette curling into the air. "His name's Edward Carr. Used to work for the city planning department. Officially, he's retired. Unofficially, he was in charge of the flood project. The diversion, the submerged village. He knew every road, every foundation, every building we put under the water." I frowned. "And me? You were part of it. Back then, you worked with him. You didn't remember because of what he did, some kind of memory wipe, or at least that's what it looks like. You and Elena were the only ones who knew the whole truth. That's why she kept leaving messages, recordings. She knew he'd come back." I gripped the edge of the dashboard. "Memory wipe? That's insane. You're saying someone made me forget years of my life?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm saying that's exactly what happened. You buried the past because he forced you to. And now it's all coming back." I looked out the window at the trees rushing by. "Why me? Why Elena?" He glanced at me, voice low. "Because you two were the only witnesses to what he did. The construction under the lake, the people he disappeared, the accidents that were meant to cover his tracks. Elena," she tried to stop him. You were supposed to stay buried. But the lake doesn't forget. She knew that. That's why she warned you, why she kept appearing." A chill crawled over me. "And the accidents? The women who died on the road. That was him," Marcus said. "Cover-ups. Test cases. He's been using the same method for years. The lake, the curve, the isolation, everything is calculated." I felt a cold sweat break across my forehead. "And the photos? The future ones?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. That's something else entirely. Something tied to the lake. Maybe Elena, maybe the water itself. It's like it's showing you what you forgot, or what might happen if you don't act." The rest of the ride was silent. The town appeared, dimly lit and still. My house was just ahead. Marcus pulled into my driveway, but neither of us moved to get out. The fog swirled around the headlights. Finally, he said quietly, "If Edward knows you're awake to this now, he'll come for you. He always does. And Daniel, he won't show mercy. You need to prepare." I swallowed hard, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I didn't recognize the man looking back at me. Someone buried beneath layers of memories, secrets, and lies. Marcus finally got out, leaving the door open. "Check the flash drive again tonight," he said. "There's more on there. I didn't touch it, but I think it's going to tell you everything you need to know, if you can handle it." I watched him disappear into the fog. The street lamp flickered overhead, casting long, wavering shadows across the yard. I sat there for a long time, heart pounding, mind racing. Edward Carr, the lake, the accidents, my own buried memories. Somewhere deep down, a part of me knew nothing would ever be the same. And the lake, it was still waiting. I stayed awake most of the night. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional drip of water from the eaves outside. I set the flash drive on the kitchen table, my hands trembling as I plugged it back into the laptop. A new folder appeared, hidden deeper this time /Darren_record/. There were dozens of files, each labeled with dates spanning decades. The first batch were audio files, recorded conversations, surveillance of the lake area, discussions in offices I'd never been in, until one file stood out. Project Darren, Witness Log, 1997, MP3. I clicked play. Static first, then a familiar voice, Edward Carr's. Check the diversion again. I don't want any surprises. The town needs to forget. Remember, witnesses must be handled. They cannot remember. The words hit me like a punch. I leaned back, stomach sinking. Witnesses. Handled? Another voice joined, younger, female. My heart froze. It was Elena. Edward, this isn't right. People could get hurt. Edward laughed softly, cold and deliberate. It's for the greater good. Nobody remembers. And if they do well, that's why we keep logs. Why we control the narrative. Why we erase mistakes. The audio ended abruptly. I stared at the screen. Other files contained spreadsheets, photos of submerged foundations, bridge supports, and even sketches of the lake's road curves. Marks in red ink showed weak points, places designed for controlled accidents. Then I found something labeled /Darren_memory/. Curious, I opened a video file. The footage was grainy, old, taken from a surveillance camera near the lake. At first, it was just trees swaying in the wind. Then I saw myself, younger, building something with my own hands. Elena beside me, arguing with Edward in the background. The memories I thought lost began flooding back. The smell of sawdust and wet wood, the pounding of machinery, the taste of mud on my gloves. The fear in Elena's eyes as we lowered heavy crates into the water. The man in the gray coat was barking orders. I felt bile rise in my throat. I helped him. The screen flickered. Another file opened automatically. This one was a journal scan, Elena's handwriting, neat, careful. Daniel doesn't remember, but he must. He helped them unknowingly when they forced his memory. He's the only one who can finish what we started. He must see. He must remember. But he must be careful. Edward is still alive. He always returns to correct mistakes. I pressed my forehead against the table. My hands shook. All this time, I've been a part of it. And she tried to save me. The files kept going. Names, dates, locations of each accident along the curve. Each carefully designed to look accidental. Each victim chosen for a reason. Alone, isolated, unsuspecting. And at the end, a single folder named /Darren_pending/. Inside, a text file opened instantly. Daniel, May 23rd, 2025, the day you come back. The day you face him. You cannot fail. The lake remembers. So must you. My hands shook as I realized the significance. Today was May 21st. May 23rd, the day the photo appeared, the day the lake showed me the reflection. 2 days from now. The day everything would come together. I sank into the chair. Every fiber of me wanted to run, hide, forget again. But another part, the part Elena had been trying to reach, forced me upright. I had to remember. I had to face it. Somewhere deep in my chest, a resolve began to grow. Edward Carr had left traps, death, and erasure in his wake. But I wasn't going to let him continue. And for the first time in decades, the lake felt like more than just water. Felt like a warning, a reminder. And the only way to survive what was coming was to remember everything. I looked at the clock. 4:13 a.m. The first hints of dawn were beginning to gray the sky. The day had started, and I was ready to dive back into the past, into the lake, into everything Edward had tried to erase. By mid-morning, The fog had lifted completely, leaving the world washed in a pale, gray light. The lake lay still behind my house, silent but heavy with memory. I spread Elena's notes and the flash drive files across the kitchen table. Each mark, each annotation, every underlined date was a breadcrumb trail leading straight to Edward Carr. The thought of facing him made my stomach twist, but the alternative, doing nothing, wasn't an option. Marcus arrived mid-morning, carrying a backpack filled with supplies. Gloves, flashlights, ropes, and an old camera. He didn't speak much, just set it down with a quiet thud. "You ready?" he asked finally. I nodded, though my voice cracked when I spoke. "I have to do this. I need to see it for myself. Everything." We started with the locations Elena had marked on the map. The submerged bridge, the diversion point on the dam, the old construction site near the east curve. Each place was a piece of the puzzle, a fragment of a past I had been forced to forget. At the bridge, I felt it most strongly. The water beneath was deep and dark, almost black in the morning light. I stepped carefully onto the crumbling edge. Marcus followed close behind, his flashlight scanning the area. "Look at this," I whispered, pointing to the eroded foundation. Rusted beams jutted from the water like broken teeth, half submerged. Something about them triggered a memory. A hand guiding mine, the weight of a crate, Elena shouting warnings that I didn't understand at the time. I knelt down and ran my fingers along the wet metal. Images flashed in my mind. The crate sinking into the water, Edward Carr watching from the shore, the cold water swallowing everything. Marcus's voice broke through my thoughts. "You okay?" I swallowed hard. I remember it all now." He glanced at me, concern etched across his face. It's bigger than I thought." The next stop was the diversion site. The ground was soft, waterlogged from recent rain. I followed the markings from the old notes, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. Here, Elena had written in her neat handwriting, "He'll come. Be ready. Daniel must face the truth." Something moved near the edge of the water, a shadow among the reeds. I froze. Marcus nudged my shoulder. "Don't tell me you see him too." The shadow shifted. A tall man in a gray coat, standing just at the tree-line, watching us. My heart slammed against my ribs. Edward Carr. I took a slow step forward, trying to keep my voice steady. Edward Carr. He didn't answer, just watched, his eyes unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. I swallowed the fear rising in my throat. "Do you remember me?" A smirk crossed his face, slow and knowing. "I remember everything," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Including you, Daniel, and your little friend Elena." I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. The lake, the bridge, the road, all of it had been his game. And now he was playing with me directly. Marcus stepped beside me, fists clenched. "Leave him alone. It's over." Edward laughed softly, a sound that seemed to make the fog itself pulse. "Over? My dear boy, it's only just begun. You've been waking memories, following breadcrumbs, and now you're here. Perfect. Exactly where I need you." I clenched my fists. Memories flooded in. Elena screaming, crates sinking, the gray coat's orders, the accidents on the road, the photos, the lake's reflection, and the realization that Edward had planned it all, including my amnesia. I took a deep breath. "It's over. I know now. Everything you buried, it's coming to the surface. You can't hide it anymore." He tilted his head, amused. "We'll see about that. But first, let's see what you remember, Daniel." He stepped closer. The water lapped against the diversion point, sending ripples across my feet. I looked at Marcus, whose eyes held the same mix of fear and determination I felt. Edward's gaze never left mine. "Do you remember the lake?" I nodded, though my throat was tight. "I remember. Everything." His lips curved into a slow, chilling smile. "Good. Then the next part is easy. Follow me." I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed to run. But I knew I had no choice. The lake, Elena, Marcus, and even the reflection from before, everything was pulling me toward him, toward the truth. And for the first time, I understood that facing Edward meant facing myself. Every buried memory, every secret, every lie. Edward led us down a narrow, overgrown path toward the water's edge. The morning fog had lifted slightly, but the air was still thick, damp, and heavy with the smell of earth and rot. Every step I took, the memories surged forward. The crates, the machinery, Elena's voice warning me, Edward's cold orders. We reached a shallow inlet where remnants of an old construction platform jutted from the water. Rusted beams and broken planks crisscrossed like a skeletal frame of what had once been a dock or storage area. Edward stopped and looked back at us, his gray coat dark against the pale water. "You see it, don't you?" he asked, his voice eerily calm. I swallowed hard. I see it. Everything. What we did here. Marcus glanced around nervously. "You can't possibly know how bad this is." Edward smiled faintly. "Ido, that's why you're here. And that's why you remember now. The lake doesn't forgive Daniel. It doesn't forget. But it can reveal." He gestured toward the water. I stepped closer, heart pounding. The lake's surface was deceptively calm. But beneath it, shapes shifted. Faint outlines of submerged foundations, scattered beams, and what appeared to be crates or boxes pressed under the murky water. Memories collided with reality. I remembered lowering those crates, remembered the sound of wood slapping water, the rush of cold, the way Elena screamed when one slipped beneath the surface. My hands shook uncontrollably. Marcus noticed my reaction. "Daniel, what is it?" I pointed toward the water. "Everything we buried. It's still here. The records, the boxes, the bodies." Edward's eyes gleamed. "You remember well. Good. But memories alone aren't enough. You need to understand the magnitude. Follow me." He stepped onto a partially submerged platform and gestured for us to follow. My boots sank into the mud and slippery planks as I followed. The structure was precarious, and every step risked plunging us into the freezing lake. Edward stopped at a spot where the water lapped higher than I expected. "Here," he said. "This is where the first accidents were staged. The curve, the diversion, the signage, all planned meticulously. Every death was calculated, every witness eliminated or erased." I pressed my hands to my head, trying to reconcile the vivid memories with the cold reality before me. Elena's voice echoed in my mind. Daniel must remember. He must see. He must act. Marcus crouched beside me, shining his flashlight under the water. "Look at this," he whispered. Beneath the murky surface, we could see crates, some partially rotted, others intact. Inside, some faint outlines of papers, small equipment, and personal items, evidence of the people who had disappeared along the curves of the road. I felt bile rise. "All of them," I whispered. "All the accidents." Edward nodded slowly. "And you helped bury them, not out of malice, but because you were made to forget. But now you remember Daniel, and now you have a choice." "What choice?" I asked, my voice trembling. "To expose it, to reveal everything. Or," he paused, the corners of his lips tilting slightly, "you can keep it buried like before, and the lake will claim more." A sudden splash echoed through the inlet. I whipped my head around. A crate had shifted on its own, rocking violently as water splashed over it. Something beneath it moved, a faint human-like outline. Marcus grabbed my arm. "Daniel, we need to leave. Now." But I couldn't look away. The reflection of the submerged crates, the memories of what had been done, and the haunting images of Elena standing at the water's edge years ago. They were all too real. Edward took a step back, his gaze fixed on me. "Decide, Daniel, today, the truth or the lie." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. I knew the lake would not forgive delay. It had shown me my reflection. It had reminded me of Elena, and now it demanded action. I looked at Marcus. He nodded, his eyes wide but resolute. I took a deep breath. "We reveal it, every last piece." Edward's smile widened. "Good, that's the start. But first," he gestured toward the water again. "You need to fully remember what happened here. Face it in its entirety or you can't move forward. The fog shifted in the morning light, curling around the platform, the water, and the edges of the lake like a living thing. And I realized there was no turning back. We didn't speak as we readied the ropes and gloves. The morning had brightened slightly, but the lake remained a glassy, black mirror, hiding decades of secrets beneath its surface. I knelt at the water's edge, watching the submerged crates shift slightly with the gentle current. Each one held a story I had tried to bury, fragments of my own life intertwined with Elena's warnings, Edward Carr's manipulations, and the people who had vanished along the curves of the road. Marcus crouched beside me. "You sure about this?" I swallowed hard. "I have to be. Every crate, every box. It's the only way to face what we did, what we were forced to do, and what Edward did to us." We started with the first crate closest to the platform. Marcus handed me one end of the rope while I gripped the other, and together we heaved. Water surged around us, cold and unrelenting, but finally the crate broke the surface. I gasped. The wood was waterlogged, dark, but intact. As we pulled it onto the platform, I noticed markings on the side, faded letters, numbers, dates. One in particular caught my eye, October 14th, 97. Memories crashed over me. I was back there, younger, my hands raw and bloody from handling crates, Elena shouting at me not to drop them, Edward standing over us, barking orders in a voice that still reverberated in my chest. I felt the weight of the past crush me, the smell of mud and rot, the sting of cold water on my arms. Marcus nudged me. "Daniel, you okay?" I nodded, though my voice shook. "I'm fine. I just remember now. Everything." We opened the crate carefully. Inside were documents, photographs, and small items. A wallet, a driver's license, personal belongings of one of the victims. I recognized a face immediately. One I had seen in the accident reports I had tried to avoid years ago. Each crate we retrieved told the same story. Evidence of carefully planned accidents, records of those who had disappeared, and reminders of Edward Carr's meticulous control. The deeper we went, the more vivid the flashbacks became. I saw myself with Elena at the lake, lowering crates, hearing her cries for mercy that I had blocked out for decades. I remembered the exact moment Edward had ordered us to stage an accident on the road, and how we had watched helplessly as it happened. "This is it," Marcus said quietly. "This is everything. All the proof we need." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Elena tried to save us from him. She left these so I'd remember, so we could stop him. We moved to the next crate, pulling it up carefully. Inside, more documents, blueprints of the lake diversion, and handwritten notes in Edward's meticulous script. One note stood out. "Daniel and Elena must forget. Any memory recalled must be punished." I felt rage rising in my chest. He tried to erase everything. Me, her, all of it. Marcus helped me with the final crate. As it broke the surface, I noticed a small wooden box tucked in the corner. My hands shook as I lifted it. Inside were photographs of Elena, Daniel, and Edward at the lake, taken secretly. And underneath, a folded piece of paper in Elena's handwriting. "He will return. You must remember. Only then can you end it." I clutched the paper to my chest, the weight of the past finally settling in. The lake had shown me my reflection, the flash drive had revealed the truth, and now the crates confirmed everything. I clutched the paper to my chest, the weight of the past finally settling in. The lake had shown me my reflection, the flash drive had revealed the truth, and now the crates confirmed everything. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "What now?" I looked at the lake, dark and still, its surface hiding decades of crimes. "Now we face him. We take this evidence. We make sure he can never hurt anyone else. And we honor Elena. We finish what she started." The fog rolled in again, thicker this time, curling around the platform and the crates like a living reminder of what had been lost. And deep in my chest, a single thought took hold. Edward Carr had controlled the past, but I still controlled the future. We packed the crates onto a small cart Marcus had brought, and I felt a surge of determination. Every memory, Every victim, every secret buried beneath the lake. It was all coming to light. The lake had demanded I remember, and I was ready. By late afternoon, the sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the lake. The crates were loaded into the back of Marcus's truck, each one a physical reminder of the years of deceit, accidents, and erasure. The weight of the past pressed heavily on both of us, yet with it came a grim determination. I ran my hands over the flash drive and Elena's notes again, committing every detail to memory. The roads Edward had used, the curves where accidents had been orchestrated, the structures submerged in the lake. I knew them now as well as I knew my own reflection, and I understood why he had targeted me and Elena in the first place. Marcus tightened the straps on the crates. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Once we confront him, there's no turning back. He's dangerous, Daniel. I've seen the files. He won't hesitate." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I don't care. This ends tonight. For Elena. For the people who never got justice. For me." We drove to the old city planning office on the outskirts of town, a crumbling building Edward had used as a base decades ago. The windows were boarded, paint peeling, and the lot overgrown with weeds. It looked abandoned, but I knew better. Marcus parked behind a rusted fence. We approached cautiously, the crates secured in the bed of the truck. I could feel the tension in the air, a static charge that seemed to raise the hair on my arms. I whispered, "He'll be waiting." Marcus didn't answer. He just handed me the flashlight and nodded toward the building. We stepped inside. Dust and mildew hit us immediately. The air was thick, and the floorboards creaked under every step. I could almost hear the echoes of the past. The sound of Edward barking orders, the shouts of workers, Elena's voice pleading. And then I saw him. Edward Carr was sitting at a desk in the center of the room, the dim light of a single lamp casting sharp shadows across his face. He didn't stand, didn't flinch. He just looked at me with that same calm, deliberate expression I had seen at the lake. "Daniel," he said softly, almost fondly, "I knew you'd remember. I wondered how long it would take." I felt my fists clench. "It ends tonight, Edward. I know everything. The lake, the accidents, the buried crates. All of it." He tilted his head. "You remember too much. That is inconvenient." I stepped closer, anger surging. "Inconvenient for you, maybe, but I have evidence now. I have everything Elena left for me. This ends with justice, not fear." Edward's eyes narrowed. "Justice? You don't even know the meaning of it. I did what had to be done. People had to be removed. Memories had to be erased. It's the only way to protect the structure of things." Marcus shifted beside me, voice low and warning. "Daniel, don't let him distract you. Remember the evidence. Stay focused." I nodded. Every crate, every document, every photo we'd uncovered flashed in my mind. The flash drive, Elena's notes, the memories of the lake, the road, the submerged bridges. Edward leaned back, smirking slightly. "So what will it be? Do you hand yourself over to the past? Or do you embrace the consequences of remembering?" I drew in a deep breath, voice steady despite the rage and fear. "I embrace the consequences. And I stop you." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only calculation. "Very well, Daniel. Let's see if you can." The room felt smaller suddenly, charged with tension. The past and present collided. My memories, the evidence we had uncovered, and Edward's presence, heavy and oppressive. I knew this confrontation would not just be about him. It would be about me, and about finally facing everything I had tried to bury for so long. And deep down, I realized one thing. There was no turning back. The moment had arrived. The room was heavy with silence. Edward remained seated, his hands folded on the desk, watching me with that unnerving calm. I could feel every memory, every suppressed fear pressing against my chest, and I knew I had to stay focused. "Show me everything," I said firmly, my voice echoing slightly off the cracked walls. "The lake, the road, the accidents, every last detail. No more hiding, Edward. His eyes gleamed with something between amusement and caution. Very well, but understanding comes at a cost, Daniel. Are you prepared for that? I nodded. I've already paid that cost. Every memory you tried to bury in me, it's coming back. He sighed softly and leaned back. Decades ago, Darren Creek Village was to be flooded. But the town, the people, they were obstacles. Obstacles to progress. I did what needed to be done to ensure that project succeeded. I shook my head. You call it progress, but it's murder. Every accident you staged, every person who disappeared, that was you. You manipulated everything, and you erased memories to cover it up. Edward's expression didn't change. Manipulate, erase, call it what you will. I preserved the outcome. Without me, countless projects would have failed, infrastructure ruined, lives disrupted. You were part of it, whether you remember or not. I felt bile rise. I was a kid. I didn't know. And Elena tried to stop you. His eyes flicked toward the far corner of the room, a shadowed spot where a small table sat with a metal box. Elena. She was clever, resourceful, but ultimately limited. She left traces, hoping someone would discover them. That's why you're here, Daniel, because she knew you'd awaken in time. I glanced at Marcus, who gave a slight nod, urging me forward. I took a step toward Edward. The lake remembers everything. The people who died, the secrets, the hidden evidence. It's all coming to light, and you will be held accountable. He smirked faintly, standing now. He was taller than I remembered, imposing, the gray coat heavy against the dim light. You speak with the certainty of someone who finally remembers, but knowing doesn't mean you control it. That lake, the roads, the past, they still have power. I swallowed my fear and stepped closer, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. Not anymore. We have the evidence, the crates, the flash drive, Elena's notes. Everything you tried to erase, I've recovered. The world will know what you did. Edward's eyes narrowed. Do you truly understand what you're holding? Every crate, every document, it isn't just proof. It's a map of consequences. You cannot simply expose it and walk away unscathed. I'll take the risk, I said, my voice growing steadier. I've already survived your games once. I won't let you manipulate me again. You've controlled the past long enough. Now the truth controls the future. He stepped toward me, and for a moment, I feared he would strike. But instead, he stopped just short, his gaze locking onto mine. Bold, he said softly. We'll see if your courage matches your memory. A sudden noise from the hallway made both of us flinch. The soft scrape of a boot, the faintest whisper. My heart leapt. The office felt suddenly alive with shadows. Edward's smirk didn't waver, but I could see tension in his posture. You brought Marcus, he said, voice low. That complicates matters. Marcus stepped forward, eyes hard, gripping a flashlight like a weapon. We're not leaving without the truth. Not now. Not ever. Edward's gaze flicked between us. Then it begins. I realized, with a mixture of dread and clarity, that the confrontation wasn't just about accusations or memories. It was about revealing the full scale of Edward Carr's control and surviving the reckoning that would follow. The crates outside, the flash drive, the lake, Elena's warnings, they weren't just evidence. They were weapons. And tonight, we were going to use them. Edward raised a hand, the gray coat sweeping the floor. Show me what you remember, Daniel. Recall everything. And only then can the consequences unfold. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of decades pressing down on me. Every suppressed memory, every hidden truth, every ghost from the lake. It was time, and I was ready to remember it all. I drew in a deep breath, the air thick with dust and tension. The room seemed smaller now, every shadow more oppressive, every sound amplified. The faint creak of the floorboards, the hum of the old lamp, the soft scrape of Edward's shoes. I remember everything, I said, voice trembling at first, then steadying with each word. The lake, the crates, the construction, the accidents on the road. Elena tried to stop it, to save lives, to save me. And you tried to erase it all. Edward's lips twitched in a thin, controlled smile. Yes, you remember. That is inconvenient. But knowing isn't the same as power, Daniel. You can recall, but can you withstand it? I will, I said firmly. I have to. I began recounting the details I had dredged from the depths of my memory. The exact sequence of each accident, how the signs had been placed, the weak points on the bridge, the crates in the lake, the people who had vanished. Each detail flowed from me as though I were describing a nightmare I had lived. A nightmare Edward had forced upon me and Elena. Edward's eyes sharpened. He took a slow step forward. Impressive. But remember this, every memory you claim is not just recollection. It's a confrontation, and confronting the past has consequences. I swallowed hard. I don't care. You'll answer for every life you've ruined, for every person you tried to erase, and for Elena. A flicker of emotion crossed his face, a brief shadow of irritation. Bold. But truth, Daniel, truth is heavier than you imagine. Even with the evidence, the world may not believe. And even if they do, consequences may still find you. Marcus stepped closer, voice steady, unwavering. We have proof. Everything is documented. Every crate, every note, every photo. He can't manipulate what's real. Edward's smirk deepened, but there was a tension in his shoulders now. You've recovered the pieces, yes, but the pieces alone don't tell the full story. The pattern, the orchestration, that is mine. Only I know how it was executed. I shook my head. We don't need your approval. We only need the truth. And that starts with you admitting what you did. Edward's eyes narrowed. He moved closer to the far wall, reaching into a hidden compartment and pulling out a small file folder. He held it up deliberately. This, he said, voice low and sharp, contains what even you don't know. Names, dates, locations, the full scale. You may have uncovered fragments, but the complete picture is mine. I stepped forward, heart hammering. Give it to me. He paused, studying me. Do you truly want it? Because once you see the whole scope, nothing will ever be the same. Your mind, your conscience, they may not survive the truth. I clenched my fists. I can survive. I must survive. For Elena. For everyone who never had justice. Edward hesitated, then placed the folder on the desk with deliberate slowness. The thud of the papers hitting the wood echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. I opened it, flipping through page after page. Records of every manipulated accident, maps of the lake and the submerged sites, photographs of victims, diagrams detailing Edward's methods, even notes about attempts to erase memories from anyone who knew too much. Each revelation hit me harder than the last. My stomach churned. This is everything. Every life. Every secret. Every cover-up. Edward's voice was calm but sharp, cutting through the weight of the folder. Do you understand now? You remember, yes. But do you understand the full gravity of what was orchestrated, and the role you unwillingly played? Yes, I said, tears prickling my eyes. I understand, and I will make it right. He leaned back, studying me, his hands steepled. Then perhaps you are ready to face the consequences, ready to reveal the lake's memory to the world. But beware, Daniel, confronting the past always demands a price. And some prices are heavier than life itself. I looked at Marcus. He nodded. We had the evidence, the memories, the truth. And now Edward had nowhere left to hide. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. But Edward's calm, calculated gaze reminded me the danger was far from over. He was still capable of manipulation, of escape, of further control. And I realized, with chilling clarity, that the lake had not finished demanding justice, and neither had Edward Carr. The room felt impossibly small now, the weight of decades pressing down on us. Edward sat rigidly at the desk, his gray coat still as deliberate and controlled as ever, but I could see the slight tension in his jaw, the subtle narrowing of his eyes. He knew this confrontation was different. We weren't children who could be manipulated anymore. I laid the flash drive and Elena's notes on the desk. Marcus leaned in beside me, steady and resolute. Everything is here, I said. Every crime, every hidden accident, every manipulation. You can't erase it this time. Edward's lips twitched, a fleeting smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Bold words, Daniel. But even with evidence, the truth is often subjective. You can't control perception, only reality. And reality, well, reality has a way of evading justice. I slammed my hand down on the desk, startling both of us. No. This time, reality is mine to reveal. You manipulated, you erased, you buried the truth under a lake and a lifetime of lies. But it's all coming up. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. He stood, his full height looming over me. You're certain you can withstand the weight of it all? The exposure, the backlash, the consequences of revealing decades of orchestrated chaos. I am, I said firmly, even as a cold shiver ran down my spine, because I won't let you control anyone else, and I won't let Elena's efforts be in vain. Edward took a slow step back, eyes sharp, analyzing. Then you understand that this choice comes at a cost. Once you push forward, there's no turning back. Every secret you reveal will be public, every hidden victim remembered, and some consequences may be unbearable. I felt a mixture of fear and resolve, the memories of the lake, the road, and the submerged crates fueling me. We accept that risk. The cost of silence is far higher than the cost of truth. He studied me for a long moment, then sighed softly. Very well. Show me what you will do. I gestured toward the crates. We'll start with these. Every document, every photo, every shred of evidence from the lake, the roads, your operations, it will be made public. Nothing hidden, nothing erased, and you will be exposed for what you are. Edward's eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before. A trace of unease, a hint of recognition that perhaps his control had slipped. Do you truly understand the ramifications? Marcus nodded beside me. We understand, and we're ready. I took a deep breath and began organizing the crates, separating the documents, photos, and notes, ensuring every piece of evidence was accounted for. Edward didn't interfere, but his presence was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Finally, after what felt like hours, the crates were ready. The evidence was irrefutable, complete, and meticulously organized. The weight of decades of manipulation, accidents, and cover-ups was laid bare before us. Edward remained seated, silent now, his calm composure masking something more fragile beneath. It seems you have indeed remembered everything. You've gathered it all. And perhaps this is the reckoning you were meant to face. I met his gaze directly. This is justice, and justice will not be delayed any longer. The first distant siren sounded outside, a signal that the world beyond this room would soon know. Edward's eyes sharpened. He realized that the confrontation was no longer just between us. The truth was about to escape. I felt the surge of adrenaline, the full weight of the past pressing into the present. Everything Elena had warned me about, every memory forced into darkness, every secret hidden beneath the lake, it was all converging. Edward stood slowly, his gray coat brushing the floor. For a brief moment, I thought he might try one last manipulation, one final escape. But he didn't. Instead, he watched, silent, as Marcus and I prepared to move the crates out, ready to deliver decades of hidden crimes into the light. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The lake had not only preserved the past, it had empowered me to finally confront it. And the reckoning we were about to unleash would be inevitable, unstoppable, and complete. The confrontation was at its peak. The past had collided with the present, and the final act was ready to unfold. The sirens grew louder outside, approaching in waves that seemed to shake the air. I felt my pulse race, but a sense of calm determination settled over me. This was it, the culmination of decades of manipulation, fear, and buried truths. Edward Carr was no longer in control. The weight of the evidence, of memory, and of justice had shifted to our hands. Marcus and I moved the crates carefully out of the office, each one a vessel of revelations. The flash drive, the documents, photographs, maps, and notes. Everything was now tangible proof of Edward's orchestration. Every step I took, every crate we carried, felt like carrying the souls of those lost, the echoes of Elena's warnings, and the decades of lies Edward had imposed on the town. Outside, police vehicles and news vans began to gather, drawn by a tip we had anonymously sent. Edward stood at the doorway, watching, his gray coat flapping in the wind, his expression a mix of resignation and that cold, measured calculation I had grown to despise. I turned to him. "It's over, Edward. Everything you tried to erase is now here. The town, the world. They'll know." He didn't speak. He only watched, eyes narrowing, as officers began moving in, surrounding the building. For a moment, he seemed almost human. Not the untouchable manipulator who had haunted our lives for decades, but just a man confronted with the consequences of his actions. The officers approached cautiously. Edward raised his hands slightly, still composed, yet the smirk that usually dominated his face was gone. He was silent as they handcuffed him, reading him his rights. I felt a strange mixture of relief and disbelief. For so long he had controlled everything, the lake, the accidents, the memories. But now he was powerless. Justice, delayed but inevitable, had arrived. Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. "We did it," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. I nodded, swallowing hard, looking back at the lake. The surface was calm, deceptively peaceful, but beneath it lay decades of secrets we had just dredged to the surface. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight begin to lift. The lake had demanded truth, and it had been answered. News crews began to arrive, and the evidence was documented meticulously. Every crate, every note, every photo, cataloged, verified, and prepared to expose the depth of Edward Carr's crimes. The story of Darren Creek Village, the submerged constructions, the orchestrated accidents, it would no longer be buried. Later, as the sun began to set, casting warm amber light across the lake, I walked to the water's edge alone. The air was cool, the breeze carrying the faint scent of damp earth and pine. I knelt, letting my hand brush the surface. For the first time in decades, I felt a sense of closure. Elena's memory lingered, strong and vivid. I whispered her name softly. "We did it, Elena. We remembered. We acted. Your efforts. They weren't in vain." The lake remained silent, but I felt its presence differently now. No longer an ominous weight, but a witness, a keeper of truth finally revealed. As I walked back toward the office, the sky darkened into night, stars beginning to pierce the fading light. The town would wake to the truth, and Edward Carr would face the consequences long overdue. And I, Daniel, could finally begin to reclaim the years stolen by fear, manipulation, and forgetfulness. The lake, once a mirror of deceit, now reflected clarity. The past, with all its horrors, had been confronted. And in that confrontation, there was hope, fragile, quiet, yet undeniable. Tonight, justice had been served, and for the first time in my life, I felt the weight of the past ease just slightly, leaving room for remembrance, for healing, and for the possibility of peace.